Jesus Christ, this was a terrible year for movies. You know how people say like 1999 was one of the best years for movies, 2004 was one of the best years for movies, stuff like that? Yeah, 2024, one of the worst years for movies easily. It is almost incredible looking at the large amount of garbage movies that we got this year in 2024. I used to think that 2023 was a really bad year for movies, and I mean, I still wouldn't call it a good year for movies, but in retrospect, compared to 2024, I'd say it was more of a mixed bag year. There were great movies that came out in 2023, undeniably. There were great movies. You had Across the Spider-Verse, obviously, The GOAT, my beloved, but then you also had Oppenheimer, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, John Wick Chapter 4, TMNT Mutant Mayhem, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. For sure, there were banger movies that came out in 2023, but there was also a lot of trash as well, and I mean a lot of trash. There were a lot of terrible movies that came out in 2023 as well. Wish, The Flash, The Little Mermaid remake, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, The Marvels, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, that doll movie that we don't talk about on this channel. Yeah, there were crappy movies that came out in 2023, but there were also great movies as well. The good and the bad in 2023, I want to say, was equal. Whereas in 2024, the bad far outweighs the good. Like, it's not even funny. It was crazy looking at how much bigger this list would get as we got further and further through the year. Mind you, I only did a top 5 list for the worst movies of 2023. In 2024, I'm doing a top 15 list. This, I'm sure, started off as a top 5 list, and then it became a top 10 list, and then it became a top 15 list, and I was almost certain, if it was possible, this could have been a top 20 list. For better or worse, it ended up not being a top 20 list. Now, even though the bad heavily outweighed the good when it came to the movies that we got in 2024, that doesn't mean we didn't get any good movies in 2024, because we very much did. There were great movies that came out in 2024. And so very briefly, I want to go over my picks for the best movies of 2024. You might be wondering, why won't I just make a separate video going over the best movies of 2024? Well, there's two simple reasons. Number one, I have a lot of video ideas in my head, and I don't want to add extra laundry to take care of, I don't want to waste time working on a best movies list. And also, number two, it is much harder for me to explain why a movie is good when compared to why a movie is bad. So I figured it would be a lot better and more convenient if I just briefly went over the best movies of the year right here, right now. So without further ado, allow me to present to y'all the top 10 best movies of 2024. Yes, the best movies are a top 10, while the worst movies are a top 15. Number 10, Nosferatu. Number 9, I Saw the TV Glow. Number 8, Saturday Night. Number 7, A Complete Unknown. Number 6, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Number 5, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Number 4, Challengers. Number 3, The Wild Robot. Number 2, Look Back. And the number 1 best movie of 2024 is, to the surprise of literally nobody, Dune Part 2. I mean, really, what else could have taken the title for Best Movie of 2024? Why would it not be Dune 2? Why would it not be Dune 2? Honorable mentions go out to Transformers 1, Monkey Man, and Long Legs. Now, something that I want to get out of the way is, if there's a certain movie that's missing from the Best Movies list and the Honorable Mentions, and the Worst Movies list and the Dishonorable Mentions, if there's a movie that came out this year that I didn't include in any of those 4 categories, there are 2 potential reasons why. Number 1, I've never seen the movie, and so I can't rank it at all. I can't rate it and say it's a good movie or a bad movie, and I'm not going to go off of public opinion. I'd rather form my own opinion. The other reason is because, I gotta be real with y'all, There were a lot of bad movies that came out in 2024. There were a few good movies that came out in 2024, but most of the movies that came out this year are just like whatever, you know? Some of the really big blockbuster movies of 2024, they didn't really do much for me, you know? Like, they just kind of exist and that's it. Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Wicked. You know, I don't hate these movies. I don't think they're bad movies, but they're not amazing movies either. They're not good enough to be on the best list or even on the honorable mentions, but they're also not bad enough to be on the worst list or even on the dishonorable mentions either. I gotta be real with y'all, I have to briefly go on a tangent. I thought I would hate Wicked. I thought Wicked would be a fucking terrible movie. I thought the trailers for it looked like complete garbage, and it would play at every single movie that I would go and see in 2024. My theater going experiences watching some of the movies that are on this list were made even worse than they already were, thanks to the trailer for this thing playing beforehand. And then I saw this movie was getting amazing reviews, even though I thought it looked like complete garbage, and so I figured, fine, I might as well go and watch the movie. I'll admit, I'll accept defeat. Maybe it's not that bad, I don't know. I wasn't ready to sit through a nearly 3-hour long musical that I was certain I was gonna hate, but you know what, this felt like a FOMO movie, you know? You might as well be part of the event. And then to my surprise, I didn't hate the movie. I don't want to say I love the movie, but you know, it's an okay movie, I guess. It's fine. It's tolerable. It's a lot more tolerable than I expected it to be. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it like, I don't know, a 6 out of 10, which I know that's not exactly a great score, but listen, I went into this movie expecting it to be a 2 out of 10, okay? So, you know, be grateful for what you get, okay? Be grateful. And then, like, besides the really big blockbusters, a lot of, like, the miscellaneous stuff is just, like, you know, they're just who cares movies, you know? Twisters is fine. Venom 3 is fine. Beetlejuice 2 is fine. Trap is fine. You know, like that sort of thing. It was just a really dry year for movies. It's like you had Dune 2 and that was it. That was like the only like big eventful movie of the year. I understand, you know, the 2023 strikes could play a part in this, but still. Some of y'all could also argue that like the reason why a lot of the movies that came out this year were bad was because of the strikes, but I'm not sure if that's the reason, to be honest. I'm pretty sure every movie that's on the worst movies list would still be bad, even if the strikes never happened. I don't think there's much of a correlation between the two. With that said, I do want to go over the dishonorable mentions for the worst movies of 2024. Now, seeing how you have this massive, huge 15-movie list, I think it's kind of fitting that the dishonorable mentions are comparatively much lighter, much shorter. Only 2 movies, and that's it. The dishonorable mentions for the worst movies of 2024 go out to Red 1 and Moana 2. The disastrous Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson double feature. Let's talk about Red 1 first. Red 1 is a movie that I went into knowing it was going to be complete garbage, and yet I thought it would be like the good kind of garbage. The trailers for Red 1 had some of the worst humor I had ever seen in a movie, but it was like a special kind of bad humor. This movie looked like it would be so unfunny that it would turn around and become funny, but for the wrong reasons. This movie looked like it would be full of the most unfunny MCU-esque humor you would ever experience in your life. And no, I'm not just saying that because Chris Evans is in the movie. Now here's the weird thing with MCU-esque humor, you know, that just happened, he's right behind me, isn't he? You know, like that sort of humor. I don't know how to describe it, but like, sometimes it's fucking insufferable MCU humor. It is insufferable to sit through because of how unfunny it is. And then other times, for whatever reason, it's funny because of how unfunny it is. And so Red 1 looked like it would be kind of a funny, bad movie. You know, it looks like the same, like, crappy, generic Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson action movie. except it's set in Christmas time, which is unfortunately not enough to differentiate it from the rest. And I gotta be honest, besides the really terrible humor, the movie was just kind of bleh. Like, it's not awful per se, it's obviously not good, it's bad, but like, you know, there's kind of a reason why it's a dishonorable mention. Even if this movie wasn't a dishonorable mention, it would still be extremely high up on the list because, you know, I guess it's watchable. I could sit through this movie a second time. I could still laugh at the jokes, not because they're genuinely funny, but because they're not funny at all. And in a way, I kind of just embrace how ridiculous, how stupid this movie is. This is very clearly not a movie that should be taken seriously. It's a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson action movie set in Christmas, where he teams up with Chris Evans to save Santa Claus from this evil, like, witch character. I don't know what the hell this movie is, but like, it's a stupid movie, okay? This isn't some deep, artistic, thought-provoking Christopher Nolan movie or anything like that. This isn't an A24 movie about war or depression or whatever. It's a stupid as hell movie that you're very clearly not supposed to take seriously. If you went into this movie expecting it to be some Martin Scorsese tier masterpiece, then, well, there's something wrong with you, okay? I don't know what else to tell you. If you go into this movie knowing exactly the kind of movie you're getting into, I guess that makes it slightly less bad. I don't know. But yeah, that's all I have to say for Red One. It's exactly what you would expect from a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson action Christmas comedy thing. If you ever wanted to watch a movie where Black Adam and Captain America team up together to save Christmas, well, this is your movie right here. And now let's move on to Moana 2, in which I'll be significantly less positive, I guess you could say, towards Moana 2. Now, I already made a video going over Moana 2, so I'm just going to briefly recap some of the stuff that I said in that video. Moana 2 is a movie that has no reason to exist at all, or more accurately, it has no reason to exist as a movie. This was originally supposed to be a direct-to-Disney Plus miniseries, and it very much shows. This does not feel like a movie that you're supposed to see in theaters. This doesn't feel like a movie you would watch on the big screen. A movie that you would have to spend money to watch. I made a video on this movie about like a month ago, and like already I don't remember what the hell happens in this movie. It's just extremely forgettable. I'm pretty sure it's like the exact same thing as the first movie, except it's like nowhere near as good as the first movie. None of the songs are memorable in the slightest. They all sound like really generic Disney songs. There are some songs where it's like you listen to them and you could very clearly tell Disney is trying to recapture the success of We Don't Talk About Bruno from Encanto, and they just fail miserably at it. There's no catchy, memorable song like, you know, the first movie had You're Welcome and Shiny and whatever. There's nothing like that. It all just sounds like, you know, derivative, boring Disney songs. To give the movie a little bit of credit, there are a few funny jokes in the movie, particularly from Maui. I'll admit it, yeah, Maui's a funny character. He could be a fun character to watch, and yeah, he's still a fun character to watch in this movie, much like with the first one, so at least the movie has that going for it. Even though Maui barely appears in the movie, he doesn't appear until like the last, like, he appears like 45 minutes or so, like almost an hour into this 1 hour and 40 minute long movie. But the main problem with this movie is just, it's extremely generic, and it doesn't work as a movie. This would have been perfectly serviceable as a direct-to-Disney Plus miniseries. There's no reason for this to have become a movie. I cannot think of any reason as to why Disney would take this and turn it into a movie. Well, actually, no. I could think of a reason. I could think of a very good reason why Disney decided to have Moana 2 become a movie and not a direct-to-Disney Plus series. I wonder what could have happened the previous year that would cause Disney to rethink what they would do with this Moana Disney Plus show. The most positive thing that I could say about Moana 2 is that it's better than Wish, but at the same time, it's not really all that better. It's kind of worse than Wish in a way, because at least Wish was like, you could make fun of Wish. You could joke about how Wish is a bad movie. You could joke about how bad the songwriting for Wish was. You could make jokes about how, like, they used AI to write the song lyrics, to write the script, you know, that sort of thing. You know, it was fun to make fun of Wish. It's not fun to make fun of Moana 2. And also, it might seem hard to believe, but Wish has a significantly better villain than Moana 2. I think this movie would have worked a lot better as a Disney Plus show because it's not strong enough. The storyline is not strong enough for this to translate into a theatrical movie that you would have to pay money to see. Of course, because this is Moana, this movie naturally made a lot of money at the box office. It's extremely close to making $1 billion if I'm correct, so you know, I made a prediction that this movie would make a lot of money simply because it's Moana, and unfortunately, it looks like I was right on that prediction. This movie really isn't all that better than Wish, and yet it still made far more money simply because it's a sequel. That's the power of brand recognition, baby. That's the power of brand recognition. There's a non-zero chance that Frozen 3 could end up being on the same level of quality as, or nah, even worse than Strange World or Wish, and it would still make $1 billion at the box office simply because it's Frozen, simply because it's something that people are familiar with. That is the sad, unfortunate truth that we just all have to accept. Again, Moana 2 is a watchable movie, but it's also just like extremely boring and uninteresting. This is the kind of movie that should be watched on Disney Plus as was intended. Of course, being that this is, again, Moana, naturally that ends up meaning the movie will make $1 billion at the box office, much to my dismay, much to a lot of people's dismay within the animation community. Unfortunately, because of how long this introduction video was, I'm gonna have to separate it from the proper first half of the list. Trust me though, the wait will be worth it. The wait will be very much worth it. Stay tuned for when I tackle the top 15 worst movies of 2024 properly. See you soon.